Today on episode 71 of Rail Talk, we talk to the CEO of the Hong Kong Jockey Club in advance of the Hong Kong International races this weekend. Appreciate some great 2-year-old performances from the weekend. Talk about the ongoing problems at Woodbine. And there's a bee in Jon's bonnet that I cannot wait to hear. I'm Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds. Nothing clever really to say today, just that it is goddamn cold. And the winter has descended upon the New York area in a heartbeat after it was like 80 degrees earlier in November. I don't like it.
Yeah. Jonathan Green, general manager at DJ Stable. And Joe, I have a pre-bee bonnet. Pre-bee in my bonnet? Is that? Okay. Anyway, I have a pre-bee in my bonnet, and it's all to you, my best friend and cohort on this podcast show. I gave you a grand smacking perfect lay it up, bet all your money, bet your mortgage on this horse, entrepreneurship over the weekend. And the horse won, and I heard tweet, nothing, crickets, nothing. I had to even bet on the other 9 horses in the race just to make sure entrepreneurship stayed at 2-1. So that way you could win more money. So hopefully you bet on the horse, Joe.
I mean, if you know me that well, if we're best podcast buds, you know I need reminders. You know you can't tell me something 3 days in advance and expect me to remember it on Saturday.
Are you allergic to money? You don't like money, I guess. I don't know.
That's why do you think I'm doing this podcast?
Let's start.
Rail Talk is sponsored by the Green Group, the #1 accounting firm in the horse business. There's one reason they're #1. No other CPA firm knows the horse industry like they do. It was so fun having Len Green on the show last week. My dad said how much he loves Len. I was telling my dad over the weekend, he's like, yeah, Len's a great guest. He's entertaining. He's knowledgeable. So Len reaches all demographics, and he will take care of you on the accounting side for sure. There's a complimentary confidential half-hour consultation in it for you if you call Len up at what's that number, Michael?
732-634-5100. Green Group 732.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. That gets me hyped. Do it before year's end so Len can prove to you that he'll save you taxes. You don't have to take it from me, though. Listen to another titan of the racing industry, Mark Taylor, who Len has helped out tremendously.
We use the Green Group for all of our accounting. He's actually doing our son's, I just met with my son this morning, and the Green Group's working on his taxes. Well, what I found with the Green Group is that they approach accounting in a similar way to the way TaylorMade approaches serving our customers in the horse business. They're always looking for a better way, right? And they're looking to minimize your tax burden and communicate thoroughly. And really, because we're not experts in that area, we don't know anything about it. So we rely on them to help us use the tax code to the best of our ability. They're really looking with a goal in mind to reduce your tax liability as opposed to just processing taxes. And I've dealt with people that handled it that way, and this is much different. They live the horse business. Len is very active. Jon Green's very active. DJ Stable. It's, and when you're in a business, then you naturally can help your clients better than you can if you're just some accountant that's parked somewhere in the middle of America and you've never owned a thoroughbred horse before. You just really can't understand all the nuances to it. So it's just a completely different experience. You're dealing with a group of people who really understand the business you're in, and they're able to help you better as a result.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Len, for all you do, and appreciate your sponsorship and your partnership. It's been a phenomenal year. Len can help you out for the 2025 tax season. Don't wait. Call him up at 732-634-5100 or go to greenco.com. Okay, so we're approaching we're within the last big week or two of the racing calendar before we take a little nap over the holidays, and next week will be our last show of 2024. We have a very, very special surprise guest, so stay tuned for that. But over the weekend, we did have the Clark and the Kentucky Jockey Club and the Goldenrod and all those races at Churchill Downs. This coming weekend, we've got this Cigar Mile card at Aqueduct, which we're going to look forward to. I don't know about you, Jon, but that Clark card is kind of a snooze for me more and more every year. But the 2-year-olds are something to talk about because Godolphin swept the Goldenrod and the Kentucky Jockey Club with Good Cheer and First Resort, respectively. They also won the Falls City with Loved. So Godolphin continues to march toward yet another Eclipse Award as champion owner. And one horse I wanted to mention for the home team, he was in the Ed Brown Stakes. Keep It Easy, son of Hardspun, who won super, super impressively. Really dusted that field despite going 4 wide on the turn. He was a horse that we had a lot of high hopes for in the summer. I expect him to be on the Kentucky Derby future wager next time out. So just to continue to I think it's good to continue to note some of these 2-year-old performances as the weeks go on, so that if you are interested in a future wager, or if you are looking for horses to follow leading up to Derby 151, you're kind of in the know early on, and help you bet those prep races as well, assuming you remember to bet them, which I don't always do, as John mentioned. But yeah, so those are some of the 2-year-olds I wanted to mention. I don't know if John has any comments or anything, or do you want me to move to the
No, Joe, the only other thing I would say is I was happy to see Jonathan's Way bounce back and run a better race than he did previously in the Breeders' Cup. I thought that was good to see that he bounced out of it and immediately got back. He didn't win, but he ran back to the levels that everyone was kind of hoping for. And then we didn't mention Barnes, the $3.2 million 2-year-old that made his debut also this past week. Again, it was the first horse that Baffert saddled in a couple of years at Churchill Downs. So I know there was a lot of hype because of that, and because they spent $3.2 million, a 2-year-old on him. But it was good to see that the horse won and lived as much as you can live up to that kind of hype, lived up to the hype as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And it was interesting the way he won, too. So I assumed a 5.5 furlong race, he's live, he's going to blast out to the front and just never get caught. But he didn't do that. He sat off and then had to run down that Dwayne Lucas horse, Innovator, who I think is pretty okay, who, if you remember, ran second to Sandman at Saratoga. Yep. And I believe it wasn't closing weekend. It was later in the meet. Anyway, so that's, definitely. I think, like I said, this is a 2-year-old crop going into the 3-year-old season that I think is stacked with talent. I think more so than most years. So I think we're going to have a really good 3-year-old crop in 2025 to follow up on the Boffo one we had in 2024. Just looking forward to Saturday. Cigar Mile Day at Aqueduct is always one of my favorite days on the racing calendar. I think it's a travesty that the Cigar Mile is not a grade 1. And I think if you look at the quality of this year's renewal, I think that makes that grade 2 status look even sillier. I mean, Bookham Dano, who's been the best 3-year-old sprinter in the country this year, is at the rail. Moving further out, you got Mulligan, who was favored in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Law Professor, who's been a nice graded stakes horse. Locked, who was a grade 1 winner as a 2-year-old, came back with a dominant 7.5 length allowance win. His first start as a 3-year-old in October. Not to mention Senior Buscador, who was a $12 million earner. And, he ran okay in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He was 5th. Coastal Mission, who won the 49er, who was a prep for this. Post Time, who was 2nd in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, 3rd in the Whitney. So this is a loaded race. And I just hate that there's no grade 1 races in New York. I've said this before. There's no grade 1 races in New York, basically from October until June now, which is just, it's an absurdity. Well, I'm sure we'll address that again after the grade stakes rulings come out for 2025. But John, this is a super, super interesting race.
It really is. And to me, Joe, the race starts and ends with Bookham Dano from the 1 hole. If he can break the way that he normally does, and Irad can get him out there and hold the position going around that 1-turn mile, I think he's really got a puncher's chance of beating the older horses in this division. The key question is, can he get that extra panel? He's been a come from behind sprinter, going 3/4, going 7/8. They tried him once going a mile in the Nashua almost exactly a year ago, and he just got beat at the end. And I think the fact that he didn't inherit the inside post, the inside rail position, that's going to give him a tremendous running start, for lack of a better term, in that kind of a race. But the horses to contend with, I mean, Mulligan also has tremendous speed, ran in the Breeders' Cup Sprint last time out. Law Professor ran a huge race last time out for Rob Actress. And Locked, I don't know if you mentioned Locked or not, but here's a horse, a 3-year-old that is just coming off an 11-month layoff. Won, for as much, it really could have won by 20 if he wanted to, and won by 7.5, going 7 furlongs, and now is, gearing up to continue to step forward as a 3-year-old turning 4. So this is a loaded race. And I think when the when the stakes group look at this race next year, I think that they're going to have to really consider it to be a G1, because I know this year it looks like it's stacked. I'll have to look back and see what last year's group looked like as well, Joe. But this Cigar Mile is living up to its predecessors as far as how good of a group of competitors there are in this race. And don't forget, we have the Remsen and the Demoiselle as appetizers, in the 7th and 8th race on Saturday as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, watch they'll bump the Clark back up to a grade 1 instead.
Well, it is in Kentucky, so there is that chance.
That's what I'm saying. That just to piss us off. But the Remsen is worth looking at, for a variety of reasons. But the horse who's probably going to be favored, Key Waden, beat our joint ownership of Volt in his maiden race last time out, 1-5. He only beat Volt by a length of 3/4. Volt's running back again on Saturday, but Key Waden looks like a serious horse. Stretches out to two turns. He'll probably be a pretty heavy favorite in there. Demoiselle looks a little bit more evenly matched on paper. So this is like the last big hurrah in New York racing for the winter. So hopefully everybody gets out there and gets to enjoy one last big day of racing at the Big A before we turn the page on the calendar. Before we get to John's Bee in the Bonnet, I want to mention the continued issues that are going on at Woodbine. So now Woodbine has had 6 fatalities since the November 9th card, which is the day that 2 horses died and they shut down. They canceled the remainder of the program. So now the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario has stepped in. So that's the regulatory body that controls racing at Woodbine. So they're putting some new steps into place to try to combat this problem. The most significant one of which is that no horses are now allowed to be entered who have run in the last 14 days. Now, this is a pretty drastic step, especially since Woodbine is closing down soon. And I think, a lot of people reasonably want to run their horses before they no longer have the chance to on that synthetic surface, which, on another topic, the New York synthetic surface could help with that in the future. But for now, that's a pretty major step to take. They've also gone the Heiser route and said that any horse that's had an intra-articular fetlock injection in the last 14 days is not going to be allowed to run. And the AGCO is requiring that an official veterinarian be present and observe horses during all morning training at Woodbine, which is something that we've seen at Santa Anita and in California to great effect. So it's great that they're taking these steps. And, we talked about it off air. It's not like one part of the track where this all is happening. It's many different parts of the track. So that would seem to suggest that it's a problem more so with the horses that are running rather than the track itself. But obviously I'm not on the ground. I'm not an expert. John, you're close with Mark Cassidy, who is there and has a pretty broad operation there. What are you hearing? Well,
the one thing that I can say is that Mark has been in communication, not only with his assistant trainers, but also with other top trainers in Canada, competitors of his. And tried to get some kind of a consensus as to, is it the racetrack? Is it part of the race? One specific part of the racetrack? Is it the colder than usual temperatures? Going on a little earlier than the year? Like, basically, what is it that's causing all this? And I guess the good news is that nobody has pointed to the racetrack as the issue. Nobody is saying, well, the racetrack, there's a sinkhole in one section, or, my exercise riders are coming back and they're saying going into the first turn, it seems like it's uneven. Like there's no commentary or any kind of discussion about that. So, Joe, what it comes down to is you have to remember that a lot of these trainers that race up at Woodbine are there from March to December. That's when they're training. That's when they're racing. There's an abbreviated track that's being used in April racing. They only race sprints basically for the first 3 or 4 weeks at Woodbine. And that's just how they found it to be safest. And basically what you're seeing, I think, is that a lot of trainers are running their horses back quicker than they had in earlier part of the season, because this is it. This is the last chance that they have to earn some income for the next 4 months. It's kind of like squirrels, saving up their nuts for the wintertime. And I think that the Racing Commission noticed that and said, hey guys, this may be the theme that we see as to why these horses are breaking down. It's not a geographic part of the track. It may just be the horses are running so many times and so back so quickly, I should say, that maybe we need to stop that, or at least put in some kind of a rule i.e. this 14-day rule, and basically say you can't do this and try to turn around and rebound your horse back into entries one more time before the end of the meet. So they're going to have a hard time closing entries up there. But I think that they're hoping that this is going to curtail, if not, absolutely delete the opportunity or the possibility of horses breaking down because they're running back too soon.
Yeah, and at least they're being proactive about it and trying to take steps, like I said, to combat the problem and not just hoping things go right. There's 8 more scheduled cards for 2024 at Woodbine. Closing day is supposed to be Saturday, December 15th. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for no more issues for the rest of those cards, because if you do have them, then you got to start asking questions about the 2025. Right. Like, what do we do to head this off at the pass and make sure that this doesn't happen again? And I think you still do have to have those conversations, but especially if there's another incident in the next 8 cards. So hopefully everybody comes back safely until the remainder of the Woodbine meet. Okay, John, the floor is yours. It's one of our favorite segments. It's the Bee in the Bonnet. Pull up that graphic, please, Julia. Thank you very much.
Do we have a sponsor for this yet? Do we have a sponsor?
No, we really should. Like, it's like, I don't know.
It should be like a Tabasco sauce or a chili mix or something heated, something that makes you immediately think of how annoyed and disgruntled that we are on certain topics of the year.
Or how about like a honey tie-in?
Or
if we could get like
but honey is more soothing. Honey. So I guess you look at it as after I emote all of the my concerns and annoyance, that I then get a calm and like tea and honey, which you're already doing to me, Joe. Just by you got me pissed off. You didn't bet on entrepreneurship, and then I relaxed, and now I'm getting So Joe, the Bee in my bonnet for this time of year is I don't understand whatsoever why Resolute Racing is breeding 2-time champion Goodnight Olive to seize the gray. And this is not in any way, shape, or form, a me being annoyed or upset or anything like that about seize the gray. I have no animosity about the horse. Okay. So be that as it may, I have a lot of respect for Anthony Beck. I have a lot of respect for Gainesway. I have a lot of respect for Brian Graves. They, negotiated to have the horse stand there. It makes sense. And they're standing him for the right price for $30,000. But Joe, you cannot economically take, and rationally take a horse like Goodnight Olive, who is a 2-time champion. You pay $6 million for, with the idea that you're gonna retire her and breed her. Then you breed her to Not This Time, who again, is one of the top stallions in the world. And there's no question as to why you do that genetically, why you do that from a financial standpoint, why you do that from a commercial standpoint. Checks all the physical standpoint, checks all the boxes that you would do. But it just doesn't make any sense why you'd spend $6 million on a 2-time champion and then breed it to an unproven $30,000 stallion. Mares only have one chance per year to produce a foal. And to handicap your mare by breeding it, beneath her, basically, to an unproven first-year stallion, a $30,000 stallion at that, doesn't make any sense to me. And the quotes that were given as to why they decided to breed Goodnight Olive to seize the gray is, the first quote was, "We wanted to get this nailed down," meaning breeding Goodnight Olive to seize the gray, "before his book fills up." Now, Joe, you got a 2-time champion who is a daughter of Go Zapper. Thank you. and
I know it was call and response.
Call and response, and is actually pretty well bred. I mean, ran beyond her pedigree. But anytime you're a 2-time champion, you're running beyond anybody's pedigree for that matter. But I would have to say that if you were deciding to whom you were going to breed your 2-time champion mare to, and you had all the stallions that were out there, and you said, "Oh, you know what? I want to breed her to this new $30,000 stallion that's standing at Gainesway Farm." I don't think that any of the people at Gainesway, I don't think Graves or Beck or anybody who represents Gainesway would say, "I'm sorry, we're full. We're full. I can't get another spot for you for Goodnight Olive." You're shit out of luck. That's number one. Okay. So it doesn't matter if he's full, not full, or anywhere in between. They could have gotten to him, probably for free. If he was any kind of a negotiator, he could do it. But that's beside the point. Second quote is, "I wanted access to the late Arrogate, and that Seize the Gray will be more valuable as a stallion." Okay. So, there are other stallions. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. There's another son of Arrogate named Archangelo that's out there that, had that bred to 150 plus mares, last year, and would have the same rating according to, the quick and dirty rating system that you can get on the bloodhorse.com. It would have an A plus, whether it's, Seize the Gray, who's a son of Arrogate, or Archangelo, who's the son of Arrogate. It's basically the same grade that you have. And at one point in time, I don't see it on his feed anymore, but at one point in time, John Stewart popped up, what the 5-cross or 6-cross would look like, and said, this is why I'm doing it. And it was an A plus on the True Nicks. Well, it's the same A plus for Archangelo. So it's not just that like there aren't any other Arrogates, and there are actually 5 sons of Arrogate that are standing out there. So if you're going to breed to a 30,000 hour stallion, you might as well go ahead and breed her to a 5,000 Arrogate stallion if you really believe the genetics are the way to go. Problem 3, Joe, and I know you're going to bring this up, so I'm going to bring it up first, is you're breeding Goodnight Olive to Seize the Gray, and the foal would be 3x3 to Smart Strike. Now, for the love of inbred cousins, there's no way that you should be breeding a mare and have the foal be 3x3 to anything. And I know you can point to certain horses that have done really well that are inbred that closely, and I can give you 10 times as many examples of ones that have failed when you're that closely inbreeding to a horse. But again, that's really close to go ahead and breed to a close relative to it. So I just don't get it. I don't get it. You could just as easily, when you breed,
notes he had.
when you breed this Ghost Sapper mare to Not This Time, Joe, that's 23% stake winners to starters. That's a really heady percentage, 23%. So 1 out of 4. And that cross has gotten, has produced Up to the Mark, who's a grade 1 and standing at stud. Princess Nor, who was also a grade 1 winner. Next, who was a grade 2 winner. Fire on Time was a grade 2 winner. So those are just 4 examples of grade 2 or grade 1 winners from the Not This Time to Ghost Sapper, cross. So that one that he did the first year makes a ton of sense. If you wanted to have the same grade, meaning an A or A plus, you could breed the mare to Quality Road. You could breed the mare to a Son of Gunrunner. You could breed the mare to Constitution, all of which are A or A pluses and would fulfill the same grade as the one that they posted online. So I don't get it. I don't understand. It doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't make genetic sense. It just doesn't make logical sense. And all this is nonsense because it's his horse, not mine. And why should I really give a shit, that people can do what they want with their own horses, and that's all well and good. But don't try to tell me that this is for the betterment of the breed, or don't try to tell me this makes economic sense or that this makes genetic sense when it doesn't. And whoever's giving you that information is not being forthright. I mean, it just isn't being true to their word. So, do they own a piece of Seize the Gray, and that's why they're breeding the mare to Seize the Gray? Well, then, if that's the case, I don't know if that is, but if that's the case, then say it, and then everyone will be like, oh, okay, you're using your share, and you're breeding her to one of the best mares that's on, God's green earth, and then at least people would say he's trying to promote his own stallion, and that makes sense. But if you're doing it for the other reasons that he mentioned, because he was afraid he wasn't going to, get a season to the horse, that's bullshit. If you're saying it because he was afraid that, or he wanted to make sure that he was going to a proper son of Arrogate or Unbridled Song, there's other ones out there. And probably the best, argument is, why would you breed to a $30,000 unproven stallion when there are so many other stallions out there that are proven that would, beget a much more valuable foal for you at the end of the day? I have another page of notes, but I'm done.
It's like he's in a courtroom with the level of notes that he had.
If it pleases the court.
On that
Exhibit B.
No, we'll adjourn for the day, because that was a good one. That was an excellent rant. Yeah, someone sponsor this shit, man. We will come up with bees to put in our bonnet if we have to every week.
Oh, we get pissed off enough, Felipe. In the back channel, there's enough. There's always a topic that we get pissed off about. We just don't necessarily say it on the show. But it's a great sponsorship, opportunity for sure.
Rail Talk is sponsored by Fasig-Tipton. Super exciting. The digital sale right around the corner for Fasig-Tipton. December digital sale starts this Thursday, December 5th. And I was pretty sure it went until the 10th. And then I looked, and now it's going until the 11th. And I see the news that the sale was expanded because of a record number of entries. Over 650 entries were put into the December digital sale at Fasig-Tipton. A phenomenal number. It's the record number of digital entries for the company. And it's broodmares, horses of racing age, broodmare prospects, yearlings, weanlings. It's got a little bit of everything. And this is the future, boys and girls. Like, if you're not involved in the digital sales, you're falling behind. And it just goes to show how popular they're becoming. The fact that they were, first of all, that they had to, but then the fact that they were able to expand this sale just like that because of all the interest. A phenomenal accomplishment and testament to what Fasig's done with the digital platform, which you can visit at digital.fasigtipton.com. All right, so we are so thrilled and honored to bring this next guest to the Rail Talk studio. He's the CEO of the Hong Kong Jockey Club. Wow, we're coming up in the world. Winfried Engelbrecht-Bresges, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be on your show. And it's a great time in Hong Kong. It's 9:55 p.m. So that's the time when I normally start my second shift.
Well, I appreciate you making some time, squeezing us in, because it is a very busy time for Hong Kong and the Hong Kong Jockey Club. It's the biggest week of the year in Hong Kong. Even maybe it's one of the biggest weeks, period, in the global racing calendar. You've got the Longines Hong Kong International races coming up this week. Can you share with us some of the things you're looking forward to and what makes this event so special?
I think we had always a vision to be one of the big global providers of what I call racing entertainment and be one, in a way, of the key global players. So we came up with our strategy in 1998, because before we were pretty regional. And then we said we want to really be one of the global leaders. And we came up with the concept to create a really global racing event. And our global racing event is then anchored on the 4 Group 1 races: the sprint, the 1200, the mile, the 2000 and the 2400, all on turf. Because with 1300 horses, you have to focus if you want to create quality. So, and we created then these international races with significant prize money, which really drove Hong Kong racing to a different level. In 1998, we had 0 horses in the international classification. Now, with 1200 horses, 1300 horses, we have normally 16 to 18. So, and when you look at the world's horse population, we run 0.7% of the world's races, but we have 8% of the best horses trained in Hong Kong. This has stimulated the whole industry. And then on the Wednesday night, we wanted to showcase the best jockey talent from around the world, and we created this Jockey series. And if you ever go to Hong Kong, I highly recommend Happy Wednesday. Is an absolutely unique experience. You're in the middle of the center, you have evening races, you are very close to the horses. So that are the 2 key anchor events which draw international crowd, which draws international participation. And it is practically part of our global brand to be really provide world-class sport. And this is our journey to excellence. And therefore, it stimulates our owners to buy the best horses because they want to win the international races. And it helps us to recruit some of the best trainers and jockeys who want to ride then not only in the international races, but on a permanent basis. So it's a key strategic anchor of our whole global racing strategy.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, the proof is there with the best horses, and there's so many people in the stands and so much money being wagered. It's a great example that we should be looking into as well here in the States. And we noticed that you recently were reelected as the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities, the IFHA chair. What exactly does that mean to you individually, and what does it mean to Hong Kong racing?
First of all, I think it is a great honor to be entrusted with this position, because especially racing faces significant challenges. And I personally think we can face these challenges only if you work globally and collaboratively to address the key challenges we have. So I'm now re-elected after 3 years. Obviously, my colleague thought I didn't do a too bad job. And I think it's definitely a recognition of the achievement which Hong Kong has made on the global stage. Because what we do, it's not only for Hong Kong. We see that horse racing is connected globally. And everything which has negatively happened in one part of the world has an impact on the other. So that we, in a way, created what I was very keen on, practically a virtual global office, where we collect the best minds in racing administration around the world. So from Japan to, in a way, Australia, to Hong Kong, to Europe, and last but not least to US and to South America, so that we work together to address significant issues. And definitely it is for the Hong Kong Jockey Club a recognition of the contributions we have made over the years, which I think is extremely important. And our government, who sees that we have been able to really become a global leader, and that gives us the enforcement, and that gives us the support. For example, the government in the last policy address announced that we are now, as one of the key equine industry and as Hong Kong Jockey Club, a key tourist attraction. So this plays all the issue that the global leadership and what we do is recognized by our government now, that this helps the internationalization of racing and around the globe.
You know, as the FHA chair, I think you have an interesting global perspective on racing and on the health of racing. You know, we've kind of reached an inflection point here in the U.S. in the last several years, trying to figure out a way to make it a level playing field and get rid of some of the trainers that were doing nefarious things. We have a new regulatory body in place that I think is making some progress. You know, what is your general sense of the health of the sport on a global scale? You know, what are some of the things that you think that racing needs to do to ensure that it exists for the next 100, 200 years?
I outlined in one of my first keynote speeches and strategy sessions we had that we think racing is on the brink of either taking off again, or that we, in a way, face significant challenge, which leads to a significant contraction. And this will lead to significant contraction of an ecosystem of racing. So in this, I outlined 9 challenges. And without going to all the challenges, what I think is key, one thing we face as industry is industry fragmentation. And if you have structural problems, you can solve them only with a holistic strategy where you agree and then implement this holistically. We have to be very key integrity of the sport. It's for me the key anchor and the trust in relation to customers. Then we face significant challenges from illegal operators who really don't make contribution to the sport. It's not only financial, but they have normally a significant negative impact on the integrity. And social acceptability, which is for me probably one of the key issues we have to address. And I see it in 2 aspects. First is from animal welfare. And the other one is that a sport cannot make only contribution to the industry participants, but what is the contribution of the sport to the community, to the society? And that you have to get really racing anchored in the society to be able to get your buy-in. And it comes the aging customer base. If you see many of the jurisdictions face a significant aging customer base, where you have 60, 70% of the fans are 50 plus, which is good that we have these loyal fans. But if we not become relevant for a younger segment, if we don't create a different way how horse racing is seen as an entertainment, I think we would have significant sustainability issues. And I feel that we have to portray racing not only as wagering, we have to portray it as global sport. People have a wagering propensity, they will wager. But if we are focused too much on the wagering side, even we know that is significant of our income stream, the social acceptability, and that goes back that people say you make use of horses for gaining profits. And if you don't tell the story, that's an ecosystem. How many people love horses? How many people take care of horses? And how the breeding and racing circle is united. I think these are our key challenges. And I firmly believe we can do this only with a united approach. And that means that the racing jurisdictions have worked closer together. And we have to address hygiene factors. And what you mentioned, I'm really glad that HKIR has been established. We had serious concern about certain development, especially in the US, where you had an unacceptable breakdown rate of horses, and where you had significant manipulation of horses via prohibited substances. So this was one, when you look at social acceptability, we're really glad. And I looked at the figures. If you see that the breakdown rate have practically half of those breakdown rates you have on non-HKIR regulated tracks. And when you see as a positive development, we had a very interesting coming together from the best experts around the world to address animal welfare, how you reduce the breakdown rate of horses. We had this in Canada. We have to use science to really minimize this, but in the end, it is best practices and how we as a sport can show that we love horses and what we do is ethically responsible.
Right. Right. And I'm glad that you brought up HKIR because Joe and I actually had Lisa Lazarus, the CEO of HKIR, on a couple of weeks ago. And we're obviously very big fans of HKIR and regulatory influence in the United States. And quite frankly, I think we've taken that we've taken a cue from you as far as what's going on in Hong Kong and the safety measures that you put into place. What other things do you think that here in the States or worldwide that we could actually adopt that you guys are already implementing that would make an impact and relevance in racing here?
I think HKIR, we had long discussions, and we see our role as IJFA and especially as Hong Kong Jockey Club to provide platform where you share best practices. What we do is, when it comes to one aspect, this is really first prohibited substances. We have probably the most holistic system how you prevent that practices, especially prohibited substances, are used. So we have we have regulatory vets, we have clinical vets. They completely operate separately. They're all employed by the club. We have an intensive in training control system, despite all these, in a way, regulatory vets, what they do. And our lab, I would humbly say, is probably the best equine lab in the world. We can even do tests at the day the horse runs, is a comprehensive test in the morning before the horse is running. So the probability that a horse with a prohibited substance run is minimal, and it comes only that maybe you have a Marfu a stable hand who mixes up feed, but even this is detected. So the integrity of the sport is key. Then when you look at track maintenance, how much technology we use. But globally, I think we have to use more science and how you measure, in a way, horses in training. If you see a change of strike rate, that you then say, look, there's suddenly a higher risk. So this is where we have, as an industry, say how we can use technology, how we work together, and how we share this. And this is, I think, key. And I personally think HKIR and the US industry and with the support of the Jockey Club as a thought leader, has done a fantastic job to turn around a situation which would have, in my view, lead to the extinction of the sport due to social acceptability.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up question on that. I think one of the things that Hong Kong does really well that we could learn from is having an on-track pharmacy where anything that could possibly go into the horse's body has to be bought on track, on the premises. How realistic is that to expand to other jurisdictions? Does it just work because it's a really localized race circuit? Like, what were the challenges in implementing that?
I personally think it is definitely a great advantage if you have all the vets and being now regulatory or clinical vets employed by us as an organization. And there's no external permitted to treat horses. So that's an internal side. I have to admit, in Germany, we introduced 30 years ago in training controls. And we had a so-called medication book where the vets who treated this had to document every medication. Then we did the in training controls, and if you see that discrepancy, then you have to make sure that this vet is not treating horses any longer. In an ideal world, when you have a more fragmented system regarding running stables, I think the licensing of vets is a key element to ensure integrity of the system. It's easier said than done. I appreciate this, but if you don't, in a way, control the risk of people abusing the system is significant.
For sure. One more question for me. I don't know, John, if you have anything else, but I wanted to ask about the World Pool, which is something that I wasn't that familiar with. So basically, it's commingling a lot of different race days in several different countries, commingling the pools together as opposed to having the fragmented pool from the bookmakers in Ireland or UK. This was your brainchild. So tell me, like, what was the genesis of this, and then what have been the benefits that you've seen from this World Pool wagering?
I introduced the concept of world pools. It's the Asian Racing Federation in February 2007. Wow. It took a little bit of time to implement it. The basic logic is if you have the best races from around the world, that you create liquidity in one pool. So where you have the most liquidity, and that you then create standards. Even if it comes now, how you produce the races, what are the minimum standards on quality control, and you anchor this around the best races in the world, you pool the liquidity. This, first of all, if you have separate pools, bookmakers or illegal bookmakers have arbitrage opportunities. When you have, let me say now, a Hong Kong house runs in Australia, the Australian customer has a completely different view of the Hong Kong house than the Hong Kong customer. But when you merge this pool, you suddenly create completely new value propositions, which is much more value. And with the liquidity, you will, like in stock market, liquidity drives liquidity. So we have made great progress. We started this whole Whirlpool concept with Royal Ascot. That was the start. And if you see now, we have limits how many races we could took in Hong Kong, is everything strong regulated that you don't overuse gambling. So we run only 820 races ourselves, and we run now around 100, 200 Whirlpool races. But what we want to do, we want to capture the best races from around the world. Then we want to create, and we're working on a new wagering protocol where you can create even more exotic bets. But if you look alone in Great Britain, every race pool, a Whirlpool meeting creates around 600,000 pounds, so that's around 800,000 US dollars for the host track, which I think is, if you look at royalty fee, intellectual property, is a very good start. So we have practically this year in the World Pool around 10 billion euro, which were bet on World Pool races. And, wow. And I can see the liquidity which is in the system, is a start. So therefore, and as one example, even the time zone is not in a way ideal. We had the meeting in the US where we bet on 4 races, the Pacific, I think it was 18 million US dollars was in the US, and we had 5 million US dollars on 4 races at a very early time in Hong Kong. So if we would extend this globally, I think the income stream we can generate it for operators is significant. But I would like to use certain income of the World Pool for those initiatives who make a difference, be it animal welfare, be it integrity management, be it education of people. So we have to generate more revenue to build capability and capacity. And I personally think we have the opportunity then, if we brand these World Pool races globally, we can create a different brand which is more attractive for race goers and present racing as a sport, but harvest practically the liquidity via the World Pool.
Yeah, no, I think the internationalizing of the sport is huge and crucial, and it's a great endeavor. And it sounds awesome that you're going to try to direct some of those funds to sustainability projects for the sport. This has been fascinating, Winfried. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for all the great work you do, and best of luck this week at the international races.
Thank you, and would love to host you in Hong Kong. So mark your calendar. Always the second Sunday in December is our big international race meeting, and the Wednesday before is Happy Wednesday. So hope to see you next year, and you can see the races in 60 countries, so I'm sure you can follow.
Yeah, wow. That's bucket list item for me. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Pleasure. See you. Bye-bye.
Rail Talk is sponsored by TaylorMade. TaylorMade sales, obviously, usually at the top of all the yearling sales with their consignments, but They're a big player now in the digital market as well, as we mentioned in the Fasig spot. TaylorMade has shifted, as they always do, to take care of whatever clients need in terms of horses of racing age, weanlings, yearlings, brood mares. They know how to market individual horses. Every single horse is different. Every single horse will be treated like it's the most important horse in the consignment. That's why TaylorMade is so successful, and that's why they continue to be the gold standard in this industry when it comes to sales, and an emerging stallion power as well. We've talked about Not This Time a bunch, and obviously his book is full, and with good reason. We've got a really nice Not This Time yearling colt that we're excited about at West Point, and there's just his accomplishments now speak for themselves, which is pretty amazing considering that he hasn't been in the stallion shed all that long. But you got to check out the rest of their stallion roster as well. Tacitus, Instagran's the sire of Key Waden, so I would watch that race in particular, see if that horse can go 2 turns, because Instagram was brilliant, but I think with that pedigree, he's going to get some horses that can go long as well. It's just a super exciting time to invest and get in kind of at the ground floor on the TaylorMade Stallion roster. Go check them out at TaylorMadeStallions.com or TaylorMadeFarm.com for the sales side. It is just as good as it gets. The website is beautiful. Go check them out. So we are so thrilled to bring this next guest back to the Rail Talk studio. He's a family member at this point of the Rail Talk team, the bloodstock manager of Arion Pedigrees, Andrew Stewart. Welcome back, my friend.
Thanks very much. Great to be back.
Oh, so glad to have you, and so glad to announce that you guys will be sponsoring the show again in 2025. So shout out to everybody at Arion. If you're not familiar with Arion Pedigrees, it's arion.co.nz. Best pedigree resource in the business, sires, dams, crosses. And Andrew, just before we get into discussing some races, just tell us a little bit about some of the exciting stuff you guys have planned for going into the new year.
Yeah, well, we're doing a completely new relaunch of the website in 2025. The data will be the same, but how you extract it and what you can get from it will be a lot bigger. We're really excited about what it's looking like, and we sort of can't wait to actually. I'm really looking forward to getting to the States and showing it off over there as well.
Yeah, we can't wait to expand to the States. And if you're unfamiliar, if you've watched the show before and you see when we talk about horses and we splash Pedigrees pages up on the screen, that's from Arion Pedigrees, and they do an unbelievable job. So we're really, really stoked to have you guys continue the partnership with us. Now let's get to the real topic of the day. Our football teams, they're doing so great. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
3% more than 1%.
Yeah, well, the Bengals are technically still alive, so you got us beat there here in New York. Let's chat about the Hong Kong International races. As we talked earlier to the CEO of the Hong Kong Jockey Club, it's a fabulous event. You can watch it in the U.S. at, I believe, 11:30 Eastern is when the coverage starts this coming Saturday. 4 big races: the Sprint, the Mile, the Vase, and the Cup. The Cup being the biggest of the 4 in terms of prize money. Andrew, I want to ask about your part of the world's interest in the HKIR, but just tell me, as a layman, if I'm going to bet this card, who are some of the horses that I either should be leaning on or maybe betting against as favorites?
Sure. I think the lay of the day, or the certainty of the day, is in the Vase, and that's Romantic Warrior. He's the reigning Hong Kong Horse of the Year. He's won the race the last 2 years. He's won his last 6. He's in superb form, and he'll probably start odds on. But if you're taking a picks 4, he'd be one-odd anchor for sure. And he'll be ridden by James McDonald, the New Zealand-bred jockey, just recently announced as the Longines world's best jockey. So
wow,
that's I think he's the cert of the day. But I think the other 3 races are fairly wide open, and should produce some really good betting. I think the Sprint is probably the race that has the most impact for North America, with no balls running. The 2023 Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint winner, and also this year's Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint winner, Starlust, is in the entries as well. So those 2 will obviously be involved in the finish. I think there are 2 really good Hong Kong horses running. There's a horse called California Spangle. He's a sort of a stalwart of the Hong Kong racing scene. He's a Group 1 winner from 6 furlongs to a mile. Loves to lead. So depending on barriers, you'll probably see him herring off in front. But the new sensation in Hong Kong is another New Zealand bred, this time a horse, in Ka Ying Rising, who's won 8 from 10, broke the 1,200 metre track record at Sha Tin, which I think had been around since 2007 a couple of weeks ago. And David Hayes, who trains him, is sort of part of a training dynasty in Australia, and he thinks this could be the best horse he's ever trained. So
wow.
He's one I'm picking. If the hype's correct, he should win the sprint.
Is it the best horse he's ever trained? Like Aidan O'Brien saying City of Troy was the best horse he ever trained, or is this for real? Is this really the best horse he's ever trained?
He's saying potentially the best horse he's ever trained, and he's trained Japan Cup winners. He's trained multiple, quite a lot of Group 1 winners in Australia, and potentially this is the best, maybe best sprinter, but possibly the best horse he's ever trained. So. He was really impressive at his last start in a Group 2 when he broke the track record. If he runs up to that, he'll be in it for sure.
Andrew, I know Joe and I talk all the time when, with Breeders' Cup races, that when they're coming up, we talk about, this is the last race that this horse is going to run before it becomes a stallion, or this is the last race that this filly is going to run before she goes into the Fasig Night of the Stars. Is there kind of this swan song of a race that you anticipate from a horse that's then going to springboard into its breeding career that's going to make an impact?
Not really. Hong Kong racing is almost 100% geldings. So I think there are 9 Japanese entries on the card. There may be there may be 1 or 2 there that are sort of having their final run before they retire to stud in Japan. But generally, these races are filled with geldings. Aidan O'Brien's got he's got some fillies running that actually ran in the Breeders' Cup races as well. I think they're in the Hong Kong Cup, a couple of 3-year-old fillies. But you would think that they would train on as 4-year-olds. So it's not known to be the end of the career for a lot of horses, the Hong Kong races.
Yeah, that's foreign concept to us here in the U.S. So it's good. It's good to know and good to hear that. You're a good man because you didn't start this interview by clowning me for saying Cogburn was the fastest horse in the world. So that kind of blew up in my face.
Of course, in North America, the timing of races is done differently to most other places in the world, whereas. And down here in New Zealand and Australia and the UK, the timer starts when the gates open. So basically from the horses are stationary when the timer starts. Whereas, I think in 2 of Cogburn's last wins, he'd run 100 feet before the timer started. So he's fast, no doubt about it. No one denies that.
Another foreign concept to us.
He probably went too fast
when they open the gates.
Yeah. And Joe, actually, speaking of Cogburn, and we'll splash this up on the screen, Andrew, for our listeners and our audience to look at. One of the reasons why I use the Arion website is I'll take our fillies and throw them up and do proposed matings to Cogburn, for example. And we're actually breeding 2 mares to Cogburn, one of which is a filly named Which Ways that we just bought out of the November sale. And what's great is you can see not only 4 generations back, 5 generations back, 7 generations back, Joe, if you really want to go back that far. And then you can go to a different option. And Andrew, you can explain this better than I can, but you can go to a different option. You can see all of the progeny of the entire family and what they sold for. So it's one-stop shop on this one report.
Yeah.
Which report is that, Andrew?
That's the research document. And that's a really popular report. As you say, it gives sales results. It gives trainers, basically lists every foal in the first 3 dams, so you can see if a family's running, if there are a lot of fillies, who they've been bred to and what they've produced. That's a really popular report, and it's actually one that I use in the office quite a lot.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal to get a holistic picture of the horses, not just on the racetrack, but in the sales ring too, what to expect when they sell and when they race. One other question about the international races for you. I'm curious if there are any Australian or New Zealand based horses who are shipping in who you think have major shots that you might be, have been more privy to than the average bettor on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I think in the Vase, I was talking about Romantic Warrior earlier. Of course, he's in the Cup, and that's the race I meant for him. In the Vase, there's a horse called Without a Fight who won the Melbourne Cup 12 months ago or 14 months ago, and then he suffered a tendon injury, and so he was out for almost 12 months. He's had one run back. He ran third in a Group 1 at Flemington about a month ago. But he's a really exciting horse. He's an Irish-bred horse. He's been in Australia for about the last 2 years. His name, Without a Fight's his name, and I think he'll be in the Vase for a long way as well. In the Mile, there's a horse called Antino. He won a Group 1 at the Melbourne Carnival as well, over a mile by 7 lengths. Another New Zealand bred, and I think he'll be in the Mile for a long way. The Mile, I think, is probably the most open of the races. There's a couple of really smart Japanese horses in there, and the locals also. There's a couple of locals that go all right at a mile.
Good intel, John.
Nope, that's all I got for those races. I'm actually, I'm cheating. I'm looking on the Arion Pedigrees website right now, just going through a couple of pedigrees of the horses that Andrew mentioned, and I appreciate being able to look on the site and getting just in depth, details on all the pedigrees. So thank you again, Andrew, for that, and also for renewing your trust with us and being on board with us for 2025.
No, it's great. We've found it's so valuable. The impact that you guys are having in the pod space is huge, and we're having people come to us and say, we've seen your sponsorship on Rail Talk, and that's what we want. I've said to you in the past that we've previously been sort of a local business. We've sort of stuck around in the Southern Hemisphere and done our stuff. But we think we've got the best database in the world, and so we're gonna go out there and sell it, and being involved with you guys is a great medium for doing that.
Yeah, no, it's been a great partnership, and the only thing left for John in the partnership is for you to send him one of those shirts, because those shirts are pretty slick too.
Those are sweet.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Andrew, thank you so much for the time and for the partnership and the friendship, my man. Also, we're going to bring Andrew back next week for a little recap and reaction to the Hong Kong international races. So get more of my man, Andrew Stewart. Thank you, brother.
No worries. Great to see you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.
All right, so that's going to do it for episode 71 of Rail Talk. Big thanks to Hong Kong Jockey Club CEO Winfried Engelbrecht-Bresges for stopping by and cluing us in to all the happenings at the Hong Kong international races. On that note, thank you to Andrew Stewart from Arion Pedigrees stopping by and giving us some of that insight. So excited to bring them into the 2025 year with their sponsorships. Go check them out at arion.co.nz. At the bottom of the screen, I'm sure we'll put up the website address, the URL. Super, super invaluable resource for pedigrees. Go check them out for sure. Thank you to our producer, Patty Wolf, our associate producers, Julia Agresta and Nathan Wilkinson, and my co-host, Jon Green. Don't forget to subscribe. I forgot to mention that in the open. Patty's going to beat me for this, but do it now. If you're still on the show and you haven't subscribed yet, go to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Every subscription helps, and you will be part of the family. Who wouldn't want to be part of this wonderful family? See you next week for the 2024 finale of Rail Talk.